Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of 4Fusion Friday. It's the first Friday of the month. And what do we do on the first Friday of the month? George, tell them.
You do 4Fusion Friday. What are you talking about?
That's right. We talk about fusion, right? And of course, the founding fathers of the show, Eric Porter and George Lamie. George is going to introduce our host, our guest, I should say. George is our host. Introduce our special guest for this month here, and then he's going to talk about some new releases before we get into the four square. So, George, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, our guest is someone that's a big fan of the channel, guy that's been an active participant in the comments for as long as I can remember. Always been insightful in there. And he has his own channel that you should check out with a lot of fusion content in addition to sci-fi and superhero stuff and movies. The channel is Warhawk Beyond 2040, and the man is Christopher Walters.
Thanks for having me, George. Great to be here and great to be with all you legends. It's a real honor.
I don't know about the legends thing, but thank you. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thank you.
Well, what can I say, really? I've been following you guys for a really long time now. I enjoy the show, and it's one of the main things I look forward to every month, for Fusion Friday. And I love what you guys do. I think you guys are doing a fantastic job.
Thank you.
Thank
I mean,
you.
we have a very dedicated audience to this show. I mean, we fully understand that this is a very niche style of music that not everybody who watches SOT is into, but the people who do watch this show wait for it with bated breath every month and can't wait for us to talk about these, in most cases, very obscure instrumental albums, right? But we love doing it. That's why we have how many episodes are we on now, George? I know you keep track of these things. I don't.
Like 31 or 2, somewhere around there.
I think I checked. I think you guys are now up to, because I saw the last one you guys did. I think you're now up to like 33. I think
Okay.
I know
something like that.
April will be 3 years, I think.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
It doesn't feel that long.
It really doesn't. I'm actually surprised that it's that long. It doesn't.
Yeah, me too.
I think you know what it is because it's a monthly show. It goes by quick, and before you know it, you just keep doing them and amassing lots of episodes. And I mean, the years just fly by. I'm even I don't even want to think about like how long we've been doing like Hudson Valley Squares and the Prog Seat because we're probably looking at. I would assume Hudson Valley Squares is close to will be 5 years in early 2025. I would think, unless we started in 2019. I don't know. Maybe it's 6 years. I've lost count. I don't know. I have no idea. I don't keep track. I have all the sorts of things I keep track of on a daily basis. Number of episodes and how many years we've been doing certain shows. That I don't. I don't do. It's too much to worry about. So anyway, let me turn it over to George. He's got some new releases for you, and then we'll get into the 4 album battle for today.
Well, it's a light month for me. It's got a couple here. First is Mike Stern, Echoes in Other Songs. This is his 23rd album. I'd like to tell you, I don't know, it depends on what you're looking for out of it. If you're of the mind that you want a reliable Mike Stern quality album, this is that. I mean, I started listening to it, the first 2 songs, Connections and Echoes, started to get a little excited. This is hot stuff, but then it kind of evolves into a typical Stern album. You got your ballads, you got your burners. It's the mix of everything. One thing I'll say is it's too long. It's 77 minutes. It's a bit of a slog. There's 2 or 3 songs that I've identified that I would definitely have excised if I was a producer. Gospel song. You can tell by the title that's not going to be a good jam. Curtis. Those kind of songs there. And unfortunately, they're all in a glob in the second half of the album, which I don't understand there, but again, if you like Stern albums of the past, you'll probably like this too because it's right in the pocket.
Do you think that we are approaching this whole law of diminishing returns when it comes to him and his solo albums? He's got so many of them. Most of them are very long,
Yeah.
and we've talked about it 100 times here on this show and across the channel. It's almost getting to the point where Stern's guest starring roles on other people's albums are kind of more exciting than his more recent solo output.
Yeah. I look more forward to that. But it's a depend on what you want thing. If you want the same reliable Stern albums, you do get that.
Yeah. Yeah, because you can't really say any of them are bad, right?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I've listened to so many of them. I own a ton of his stuff. I find that like in the last decade or so, I haven't gotten really as excited about any of his albums like I did for the first like maybe six, seven, eight albums that he released.
Yeah.
It just seems like a lot of them are kind of more of the same. They're good. His playing is great. I mean, he's one of the greats out there. But yeah, it's almost like too many albums, too long albums, and they just don't seem to generate much of anything that's all that different than what he's been doing. But like you said, to a lot of people, that's okay. It's familiar. That's what they want. So
We'd like wrinkles, but wrinkles are not coming, I don't think. The other new release, I know at least Chris is excited about this also. John Beasley and the Frankfurt Big Band returning to Forever.
Oh yeah.
This is a big band treatment of all the classic Return to Forever stuff. Something I didn't know I needed in my life, but I actually do because this kicks ass.
Absolutely.
The Captain Senior Mouse, the lead track, I'm sold right there. The arrangement on that is excellent. Vulcan Worlds is another one that really kicks ass. You got so many classic tracks here: Space Circus, No Mystery, Medieval Overture. You know, the big band's great. The more traditional fusion instruments, all those guys can play too. It's more about the inventive arrangements. If you think that Return to Forever with horns sounds interesting, you're gonna love this. So
I was just going to ask you because we just talked about it the other day on the Hudson Valley Squares about how so a lot of us don't get all that jazzed up about when bands and artists do covers of classic songs and they do them exactly the same. There's like nothing different. There's no originality in there. They're not giving it their own spin. They're just basically doing faithful renditions of songs that we love and that really don't give us any incentive to want to listen to them as opposed to the originals. So it sounds like this. It's like you know the songs, but they're totally giving it their own spin. Plus, you've got all the different. I'm sure they're using tons of horns and things like that to kind of yeah. So that sounds like something that would be of great interest, I think.
just by virtue of the amount of horns on this, it already, sounds totally different. And then they do mess with the arrangements just enough to give you something a little new. But yeah, highly recommended.
Cool.
That's it.
We'll have those down in the comments below so you guys can go investigate them further. So, all right. So we need to. I'm gonna man the Prezi here for a second. Bear with me, folks, and we'll show you all of our albums being featured today in this four square. God, this Prezi's the slowest thing on the planet. All right. Let's get our first one here.
Well, let me introduce the topic. It
Yes, go
is,
ahead. While I'm doing that, go for it, George.
I would call it breezy fusion, which we're kind of saying late 70s guitar player solo albums that kind of had it's kind of had that LA feel, not like serious New York kind of playing, more of that laid back style right in the pocket. So we got Larry Carlton, self-titled, Lee Ritenour, Captain Fingers, Robben Ford. Oh, what's this one called again? The Inside Story. Steve Kahn, the Blue Man. So we like to start these things off with Eric, but we're not going to this time because we're going to start it off with Pete.
Whoa!
It's
All
his
right
time.
then. Throw me for a loop.
He
Okay.
came up with this topic. He came up with the albums. So where are you headed for your number 4?
All right, so let me start off by saying that I love all four of these players a lot. I think these guys really exemplify that kind of like West Coast style right there. There's something, when you talk about fusion of the 70s and the early 80s, you've got like the LA sound, you've got the New York sound, there's the European thing going on, right? I mean, these are all cut from the same cloth, and all these guys were big studio cats, right? Big time. So they appear. I mean, you look at any of the discographies of any of these guitar players, and they've played with everybody, including having their own stuff. So I found this one pretty difficult because I think like guitar playing wise, any of these can be number one. So it's almost impossible to kind of judge by just the playing because they're all virtuosos. They're all amazing. I love all of them. So you had to kind of go a little deeper and look at the compositions, tempos of the songs and the albums, the arrangements, all that sort of thing. So I'm going to go number four. It almost pains me to say this because he might be the most talented out of all of them, but I'm going to go with Robben Ford's album, The Inside Story. Excuse me, from 1979. So this is his first album for Elektra Records. He's got a great cast. I mean, he's got Tom Malone and Lou Marini, which were, both of those guys were from the Saturday Night Live house bands and played with the Blues Brothers, right? These guys have done a lot of stuff. Russell Ferrante's here, Jimmy Haslip, Ricky Lawson, Alan Rubin, and a whole bunch of other people. It's more of there's jazzy stuff on here, there's fusion, there's a lot of blues on here as well. I think Magic Sam is really good, funky, tasty guitar licks all over the place, really nice solos, great groove. Really like that a lot. I think Robben's tone, I mean, he has been known as the tone guy through his whole career, especially later in his career. He's playing those Dumble amps and this guy's just so good. For the one I love, that's pretty good. Great lead guitar, kind of mellow. I don't really care for North Carolina at all. That's kind of bluesy and just, I don't know, just it seems like weird on this album. But There's No One Else is great, and man, his tone just absolutely kills on that. Really nice electric piano on this album. That's a big plus there. Inside Story, title track, great leads on that. Need Somebody is also kind of bluesy, but I like this one better than the other one. And good horns on that too. The lead guitar is really nice. Far Away, kind of laid back. Guitar solos are really good. I really like Tea Time for Eric, which for you, Eric, they did that song for you. That might be one of my favorites on the album. It's really good. I think overall, his playing is fantastic here. I wish the album, though, had a little more energy in spots. I find it's a little mellow, it's a little bluesy, but his playing is just so damn good I can't say that I don't like it because I do really like this album a lot, especially his playing. I just find that the other three albums have a little bit more life to them. But I could say that the best guitar playing out of all of them is on this album. Possibly. I don't know. There's great playing on all these albums. But yeah, that's my number four, Robben Ford, The Inside Story.
Eric, where are you headed?
Okay. Well, I just wanted to ask this because I knew three of the four. I had not, for some reason, Steve Kahn did not ring a bell with me. I don't know why. I mean, I had Guitar Player magazine for years, so I've read a lot about Lee Ritenour, Larry Carlton, Robben Ford, Steve Kahn. When that got sent, I'm like, I got to go look the guy up. So I guess
He's done a lot of stuff. He's really
obviously he has.
Oh yeah,
So
absolutely.
when I started listening to these I don't own any of them. Pretty much all around the same time period, I think, George, the way you pulled these out, or Pete, you picked these.
Yeah,
So
they're basically the years are 79, 78, 78, 77. So all
okay.
within the year, 2 years from each other.
And like you said, you look at the resumes of these four guys. They've played with everybody, obviously top of the line studio guys, and they each of them have quite a few releases. So, but I'm going with Lee Ritenour at number four, Captain Fingers. So with this one, the title track I thought was great. I really like the bass work in that one as well as the guitar, and I like how Lee had a very clean tone, and then kind of towards the end of it gets a little hair on it, But I think a lot of these were, when I'm listening, and like I said, this is a first time listening to a lot of these. It's just interesting to think about, like, were they pushing this for radio at times? There's a couple vocal tunes on here. So I wasn't sure if it's kind of like the Steely, and I hate to use Steely Dan because everyone talks about all the guitar players that have played with them, but I was wondering kind of if they were slotting this stuff kind of in that vein. I think all but one of these has a few vocal tracks on them, and then the rest are instrumental. And Pete, I gotta agree with you what you kind of said about Robben when Ritenour gets to let go. I think like Margarita is another one. Space Glide, there's slide in that, and there's everything. I love when these guys solo. The vocal tracks, and okay, but sometimes come off a little cheesy. We just talked about remakes. Isn't she lovely? Stevie, you don't top Stevie, so
Yeah, it's not needed.
that one was, yeah, that was
I
not
agree.
necessary. But I liked even Sun Song. I think the last one, throwing some acoustic in there, um, really good. I think a lot of them will use horns, like that Space Glide has sax in it that really is good. I think it's getting used to, the music maybe being a little more laid back, like you were saying with the LA sound, and it's not something I've listened to a lot of. So I listened to these a lot because as I went through them, the guitar really you start picking your spots and you're hearing, how really good the guitar stuff is in here. But, you get the strings over the top sometimes and some of the other stuff. Not that the band is holding back. I think the compositions were written this way, but sometimes you're like, come on, guys, a little more punch to this. And I think that's why I might have put Lee at number 4. I thought maybe his was maybe the most laid back of the 4. But again, these were all first time listens for me. And you can't knock these guys. Great players. There's some really good stuff on here. But somebody's got to be 4. So I'm going with Lee Ritenour at number 4.
And to give a little context, because Eric kind of brought up some good points here, I think all of these albums, again, they're all from right around the same time period. This is basically the record labels trying to push jazz kind of into the pop mainstream a little bit because of the success of Steely Dan, because of the success of Joni Mitchell, who at the time was playing with all these jazz and fusion guys, Tom Scott and the LA Express, Pat Metheny to an extent, right? You had Spyro Gyra right around the corner. So you have like all of this kind of like, oh, George Benson, right? There you have, that's one of the main reasons, right?
Yep.
So here you've got these artists that are selling really well with jazzier music. So what the labels were trying to do, and these were all on major labels, were trying to push these jazz artists and get them to do stuff that's a little bit more acceptable to normal pop listeners. They're kind of funky. There's some pop stuff going on here, a little R&B, as well as some rock and things like that. So I think that's why a lot of, especially the LA scene, was a lot of the sound was very, very similar, and they're all kind of cut from the same cloth.
Makes sense.
Chris, what do you got it for?
Well, when this was presented to me, I mean, these are 4 guys I know really well from inside out. And, some of these albums I hadn't listened to in many years. So this was a great challenge for me to go back to revisit some of these classic albums from the 70s. And, to echo Eric's words, this was really hard because I love all of these guys. They're all brilliant guitar players. But, like Eric said, it's got to be a number 4. So I'm going with, I don't have the CD copy, but I have the vinyl. Captain Fingers. Now, Lee Ritenour is, one of my favorite guitar players. And this is a good album, but I felt that some of his better stuff came after this because while this is a good album, the Stevie Wonder track kind of ruined it for me a little bit because, you know, I have a lot of respect for Stevie Wonder, and you're never going to beat the original. And and the vocals on here, I just found it a little bit corny because it wasn't really trying to be anything different. It just sounded like Stevie Wonder. If it'd just been an instrumental, probably would have been better. But yeah, that kind of spoiled it for me a little bit. But the rest of the album, it's pretty solid. The title track, Captain Fingers, is excellent, very funky and burning in some areas. Dolphin Dreams, while a good track, I felt there was better versions of this later on, which he would experiment with on the Synfax in the mid 80s. I thought that was a much better version of this track, but still memorable. And Fly By Night is a really good track. That was a Dave Grusin composition. I thought that was a really good track
Yeah.
And Margarita was a great track as well. And Space Glide and Sun Song, were really good songs as well. But I just think the Stevie Wonder just kind of let it down for me a little bit. But that's my number four. Caps and Fingers, good album, but not one of Lee Ritenour's best. As I said, I think some of his better stuff came long after this. So there you have it. Caps and Fingers for me at number four.
Yeah, Lee Ritenour and Dave Grusin became very, very close friends. And any of these
Yeah,
guys, you could do a hell of a lot worse than covering a Dave Grusin song because that guy was such a great writer. I mean, he just anything he
absolutely.
touched just had that kind of accessibility and great melodies and whatnot. Just a awesome, awesome songwriter.
It's interesting with Dave Grusin because prior to hooking up with Lee Ritenour, a lot of his earlier stuff from like the '60s were quite corny. I mean, they were kind of like it was off the time, obviously, but I felt that he really came into his own when he started doing film scores and he started going down the more orchestral route. That's when he really started to come into his own as a composer. And then once he started playing with Lee Ritenour, it was just instant magic with those two. As you say, they did a lot of projects together all throughout the '80s, all
Yeah.
up to like the early '90s on the GRP label. And
I was going to
there
say
was some,
both of those guys were like stalwarts of the GRP label for many, many years.
oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
definitely,
I think the G
100%.
in GRP is Grusin. I think it's
Yeah.
Grusin Rosen Productions.
Yep. Yep.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, my number four, I'm going to go with Pete. It's going to be Robben Ford, Inside Story, 1979. Opener, Magic Sam. I agree with Pete. That's a pretty good tune. For the One I Love, what am I going to say about this one, Eric? You know what I say about songs like Love in the
I
Title on a Fusion album? It's not going to be one of the good jams. It's not. Uh, North Carolina is a vocal blues tune. It's not for me. Title track's pretty solid. I dig that tune. Probably my fit. Well, I won't say it's my favorite because that's coming up. Um, Need Somebody is another vocal tune. I'll pass on that. Tea Time for Eric. That's my favorite song in the album. It's got a vaguely funky vibe to it. Some nice playing. I welcomed the funk in it because some of the other flavors on here, like the blues and some of the more straight LA '70s fusion stuff, was a little less interesting to me than maybe some more funk would have been. But
think the piano in that one is good too, and that
yes,
Tea Time for
and
Eric.
just that little stuttered groove that's in there immediately perked me up. So that's probably my favorite. That and um, what did I say?
Title track.
Title track. Yeah, those two I would say are standouts. But yeah, this kind of was an easy four for me. So that's my four. Let's go back to Pete.
All right, my number three, I'm going to go with Captain Fingers. I really like this album. I bought this ages ago. I have it on, I think I bought it on cassette back in like the early 80s, and I have it on CD as well. I mean, I like it a lot. I think it's a really good album. What a great cast, though. I mean, you got Grusin's on here, Patrice Rushen's on here, Ian Underwood's on here, Anthony Jackson, Alfonso Johnson, the Porcaro brothers, Harvey Mason, Ernie Watts, Ray Parker Jr. I mean, the cast of characters that's on all these albums are just real ridiculous. But that's not surprising because these guys are studio dudes and they just basically invited their friends to come and play on their album. So I mean, whatever. I love the title track. I love that I love that. It's so kind of funky, and I love that little just this little burst of creativity he does there. And I think Lee is like one of those guys because I've got tons of his albums, and he's notorious for being very, very understated and kind of like what Eric was saying before. Sometimes you just want these guys to just rip a little bit more. And I've seen him live a couple times, and the guy brings it. But some of his solo albums are just, the studio albums. They can be a little on the tame side, but he's just such a great player, and he's so melodic. Um, like I said, title track is great. I really like Dolphin Dreams. I agree with Chris. I think there are other versions of this that are even better, but I still think it's really good. And it's kind of cool. He's using like one of those early guitar synthesizers, which is really interesting. So there's some kind of cool guitar synth tones on this whole album, which is very early. I love Fly By Night. So catchy. Margarita's killer. That's probably has some of his most fiery guitar on the whole album, I think. And that's one of the best. And his tone is so good. I agree. Isn't she lovely? Just take it off here. It just doesn't belong. And I really like Space Glide. That's like a very good representation of what that kind of funky LA jazz rock fusion thing is all about. That right there. That song exemplifies what this whole scene was all about. A lot of great solos on the whole thing. I don't really like Sun Song. That's kind of sleepy for a closer, but otherwise, I really like this album a lot. But it's number 3 for me.
Eric, what about you?
I went with Robben Ford at number 3. Um, like you guys said, Magic Sam, really good opener, I thought. Um, some nice intensity. I think that might have been why Robben went above Lee Ritenour for me. I thought when he came out to play, he just had a little more fire than the Lee Ritenour record. And George, I'll throw that one out there. That for the one I love, I get what you're saying, but there's some hot guitar in that one. Pete, you didn't mention the harmonica in North Carolina, so I'll mention the vocals and we'll throw the harmonica in there. But again, I thought his lead tone on that one is pretty good. I
I
dig
mean,
it.
let's be real. His tone on any song is amazing.
Yeah,
You're never going to get any bad playing or tone from this guy. He arguably, like I said, is probably the best guitar player in this whole list here, and they're all amazing. But he's something special. I got to see him in Washington D.C. a couple of years ago, and it just blew my mind how great he was. I mean,
nice.
but the thing is, sometimes this album, it's we're talking about songs here and albums and in general, not just guitar solos and things. So
I hear you.
yeah.
The title track, I gotta agree with. That's probably my favorite. The guitar in that one, that kills. Um, and then kind of the ends a little. I think like Need Somebody and Far Away were okay, but yeah, so. And I'll like you guys mentioned with the Tea Time for Eric, I might go with the title track over that one. But that's terrific. Great guitar and bass. The bass again in that one I thought really was good. And something I don't always listen for, but I probably should. I really like the rhythm guitar in this song. Go back and listen to. There's just you listen to these guys like you said, they're studio guys, excellent players. I'm always focusing on the lead work, but when I go back and listen to some of the rhythm, I like how stuff comes in and out. I like that funky, a lot of good right hand with the rhythm guitar. And I mentioned, I think when you guys were talking to I really like the piano in that tune too. So good ender, good way to close the record. And like you said, I mean, when he gets cooking, he's terrific. So Robben Ford at number 3.
Eric, you ever get the impression that on this album specifically that Robben is kind of torn between do I want to make a jazz album or do I want to make a blues album?
There is a lot of bluesy stuff. I mean, that North Carolina, you get the vocals very bluesy. What is it like? There's no one else that really has kind of a bluesy feel to it. And to me, I think of the 4, he definitely the blues influence is there with his playing over the other players by far.
Yeah, I think if you look at his career overall, he's done way more blues albums than anything else. I don't think he's really done a lot of jazz stuff in his career. He's done some rock things. I mean, shit, he played some solos on a Kiss album for crying out loud. So,
He can do it all, right?
he can do it all. Yeah, he's probably that guy. You want anything, just call Robben Ford. He'll do it for you.
Was that Creatures of the Night?
Yeah, yeah.
Was it? Okay. That's what I thought.
What's your 3, Chris?
My number 3 is Robben Ford, The Inside Story. Robben Ford is a fantastic guitar player. I have never really cared for his vocals that much. I feel that what lets Robben Ford down at times is the vocals. When he does instrumental and he's playing the guitar, there's very few out there that can match with him. And I agree with Pete. He has done far more blues stuff than jazz stuff. And this album, it's kind of in a way helped set the stage for the formation of the Yellow Jackets because, we've got Ricky Lawson, Jimmy Haslip, and Russell Ferrante. They were going to be the foundation for the Yellow Jackets. I agree. The title track, The Inside Story, for me is probably the best track of the entire album. Magic Sam is a good opener. The 2 vocal tracks on this album, there wasn't much vocals on them, but I could probably have done without them. I don't think they were really needed. The rest to the album itself, it's pretty solid, but I think there are better Robin Ford albums out there. But this isn't a bad album, but it's enjoyable. But when Robin Ford isn't singing and when he's on the guitar, he really burns it up. And there's some excellent guitar playing from Ford. So that's my number three, The Inside Story.
For everybody watching, Chris mentioned the Yellow Jackets, so that Robben, was one of obviously all the members that we just talked about who formed the Yellow Jackets, and he would leave the band fairly early on. But that first Yellow Jackets album is pretty hot. There's a lot of really good stuff and great playing on that album. So for those who like Robben Ford but haven't listened to a lot of his more jazzier stuff, go check out the first Yellow Jackets. It's a really, really good album.
My number three, I'll be the first to call out Larry Carlton, 1978. Room 335, the opener. I've heard about this song for years and years, and I just never checked into this. I just had that LA thing in my head, and I thought, it's he's being overblown, but it's got a ton of press for a good reason. But what I take away from it more is anyone ever going to mention that these chords are the chords from Peg that he's soloing over? I mean, it's totally Steely Dan Peg. As soon as I heard it, I'm like, wait a minute, I know those chords.
We had that back and forth, George, and I'm like, huh. I guess Larry took a little away from one of his sessions or something. Yeah.
I've never heard mentioned, which is it's kind of odd. Where'd You Come From is kind of a yacht rock track, a little bit cheesy for me, weak vocals, really weak vocals. Pointed Up is hot stuff. That is my favorite song and my favorite soloing on the album. He is blazing on this one.
Yeah.
More than Room 335. In fact, it's just straight guitar playing. I'll put that song at the top of these four albums. That's for me. I was really impressed with that.
I would agree with it. That is the best song across all four of them.
Yep.
That's hot. No surprise, I'm sure, for Eric. I like Rio Samba. Nice bass solo from Abe Laboriel on that one. I Apologize, another hacky vocal track. Why is it on here? I don't know. Don't Give It Up is a boogie. That's pretty good. I Suppose Only Yesterday. Only Yesterday. Yeah, that's a softie to close the album. It's just kind of there. Not too bad. For me, my 2 and 3 were very tight. What put it over the edge is the vocal tunes on this are particularly grating for me, more so than the other ones. So I had it at number 3. Pete?
All right, my number 2, I'm going to go with Steve Conn, the Blue Man. So this is the only one out of the four that I had never heard before. But I have like other Steve Conn albums, and but I've heard people talk about this for ages and ages, so I knew it was I wanted to advise George to pick it because I was very interested in it being a part of this because I had never heard it before. But I just really thought it would be a good idea to have Steve Conn be a part of this Foursquare because I do really appreciate his talents. This is a really good album. So this is his third album, CBS Records. Again, all these guys are on major labels. Great cast. I mean, Steve Gadd is here. The Brecker brothers are here. Sanborn, Will Lee, Bob James, Don Grolnick. I mean, the list goes on and on. Steve's guitar solos are just really, really, really good on this album. Daily Bowls. I mean, the back and forth between the guitar and the organ, just so good. Title track is really good. Some Downtime, that could have been on a Brecker Brothers album. It's just funky and monstrous, and the horns from the brothers are so good. The lead guitar tone is just absolutely awesome. I really love the horns again on the little ones, and Sanborn's sax solo is just so good. Not crazy about Daily Valley. That's okay. But, the acoustic guitar is nice. Keyboards is nicely done. And Eye Over Autumn is another laid back piece, but again, the back and forth between the guitar and the sax is just to kind of close out the song is really, really well done. I need to get this album. It's like as soon as I listen to it a couple times, I'm like, all right, I'm on Discogs. I'm like, it's hard to get. It's really pricey, but I need to track down a copy of this because I think it's really, really good. This was my big surprise here. It's like the other three, I really knew what they were all about, but this one, again, it comes in at number two. So yeah, really good stuff. Couldn't even be number one on any other day, but good album.
Some of Steve Kahn's Eyewitness albums I thought were really good, and he really kind of comes into his own as a guitar player. I think with the Blue Man, that's kind of like the start of what was to become Eyewitness shortly after. There's some really good music there.
Eric, what do you got it to?
I'm going with Larry Carlton at number two. He might be, and based on you guys discussing Pointed Up, obviously just best guitar work I think of all four is on that song that we listened to. I love his playing, absolutely. George and I had the back and forth on Room 335 because I'm like, doesn't that sound a little familiar? And you get the little opening keyboard, which from Peg, the chords. But great guitar work in that. I really, really love his playing. And I think, George, you said you're number two and number three. I mean, the vocal tunes, Where Did You Come From? And I apologize, were just cheesy. And that almost put this to number three, but I'm like, God, his playing is so good on the other stuff. Even kind of the mellow stuff like Nightcrawler, mellow, but it's really nice guitar work. Real Samba, I liked. Keys and synth were good in that one too. And it was only yesterday. Yeah, it's a mellow closer or whatever, but and I think you mentioned the guitar and the organ, the bluesy kind of feel of Don't Give It Up. But boy, that Pointed Up. I mean, a lot of times I'm listening to this and you're kind of doing other things. That song, boy, that always is like, whoa, you hear that and at attention. And I know Larry Carlton's great. Just the vocal tunes made this one like, boy, I mean, they could be the worst vocal tunes of the vocal tunes on these albums. But I don't know. There's something about his playing. I think I might put him as my favorite player of the four. I just love his lead work.
I would agree with that. Yeah, he's something special, and I would say go see him live if you can, if he comes around again, because he's just absolutely incredible.
He's killer. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw him at a little club here, like in Beacon, New York, right across the river, a bunch of years ago, and I sat right in the front, and I was just like, this guy was just amazing.
You're blown away.
So
Nice.
good. Yeah, he on his follow-up album, which got the name of the album is escaping me right now, but he has another ripper like Pointed Up on the next album as well.
Was it Lightning Strike or something?
Yes,
or
Lightning Strike.
Is that the one? Okay. Yeah, I got to check that stuff. Maybe make a compilation like the best of the killer tunes, because that Pointed Up is, like you guys said, that is probably the best, my favorite song of the four albums we listened to.
Yeah. You'd love to ignore the vocal tunes, but it's an 8-song album and you got two, that's 25%. I mean, it's a tough pill.
Agreed.
Chris, where you headed for two?
At number two, I'm going with Larry Carlton. Absolutely dynamite album. I nearly had this at number four because the vocal tracks pretty much killed it for me. But to Eric, with his words, the guitar play is just absolutely amazing. So that kind of like saved it for me. But yes, a really good album. Room 335, I've heard that a lot of times, live when I've seen Larry Carlton. It's absolutely brilliant. And Points It Up's really good. And Nightcrawler's really good. And Rio Samba could probably be my favorite track of the entire album. It's really good. And it's a good, solid album. The guitar playing from Carlton is brilliant. But Larry Carlton's not the best singer in the world. So he didn't do the vocals for too long, thankfully. But yeah, it's only 2 vocal tracks, so you can kind of forgive this album, but it's really good. So that's my number 2, Larry Carlton. It's excellent stuff.
It had to be label mandates with all these guys doing vocal tunes. I mean,
yeah.
I know.
My number 2 is Lee Ritenour, Captain Fingers. This is the only one I'd ever heard before this exercise. My buddy Jim had the vinyl back in the day. That was when we were just following the chains of, getting people's names we'd see in the credits. And one of the guys we were buying a lot of everything we saw was Anthony Jackson. So he got this. And we like some of it. I mean, it opens with the title tune. This is a 70s fusion song. It's just got that classic 70s fusion feel. Anthony Jackson with that what is that, a flange on his bass. He's always got that same sound. It just on all those records back then, it just brings you right back. Um, so nice rhythm track from him and Harvey Mason on that. Dolphin Dreams, a little bit of a softie on here. Fly By Night's good. It's a pretty good tune. Margarita is another one that screams 70s fusion. Like one of the harder hitting tracks on here. That's good stuff. Uh, isn't she lovely? The melody is gorgeous in that tune, so I get the desire to try and do it, but that's one of those cases where only a human voice is gonna, a good human voice is gonna bring it out. And it seems like everybody that covers it, it's just they don't choose the right singer, which is like you got to get a Stevie kind of guy, and none of them do really. And this one just popped up in the Roman Bondarenko. It's on that album too. That's the instrumental version, I believe. It's like these guys got to give it up with that tune. Because none of them are Stevie. Space Glide is pretty good. I like that song. And like Pete said, Sun Song kind of closes it out. I would say that kind of a smooth jazz too. It's kind of a in that smooth jazz neck of the woods. But I had this slightly over the Carlton because only one vocal song as opposed to two, and that's pretty much all it is because they're real close for me. That's my two. Pete, crown your champion.
Larry Carlton's my champion. It's the one I've had the longest. I'm just a massive Larry fan, and God, I again, this is another one of those things I had on cassette back in like the mid '80s. And yeah, I mean, at the time, I hated the vocal pieces. I would say after like close to 40 years, I don't really, I don't really mind him all that much anymore. He doesn't really have a good voice, but baby, I'm so sorry. I apologize. It's just whatever. it's kind of lame, but the guitar solo in that song is terrific, and I'm like, yeah, whatever. Again, you know, obviously the Steely Dan connection was very, very popular, and the record they would probably figured, well, why don't you do like a song in that vein or two songs in that vein because people know your name now from Steely Dan, whatever. It's not. This was a minor hit though, all things considered. The title track is great. Um, God, Pointed Up is just so good. When I was re-listening to all these albums over the last couple of weeks, like it's like every time I would go replay this album, I would back up and play Pointed Up again and again and again. And so every time I went through the album, I would have to hear that at least 3 or 4 times. It's just so good. I love Nightcrawler. I think that's just really memorable. It's kind of moody, but I love it. Rio Samba's tremendous. His leads are so tasty. And I love Don't Give It Up. I mean, I think the lead guitar is great. The electric piano is so good. I love his tone on the whole album. It was only yesterday is really good too. It's kind of mellow, but man, the melodies are so good. I just think his playing is just so tremendous on this album. And again, all these guys are great. They all have great tone, but to me, Larry's always going to sit just a little higher. I will say, especially for Eric, um, he released an album on the GRP label. God, it was 89 or 90 called On Solid Ground, which is kind of in this style, but a little bit more modern and more of a rock edge. And if I remember correctly, I don't think there's any vocal tunes, maybe one. Definitely check that out. And he's not, I believe he was playing like an ESP guitar or something like that. He switched to like Strat style guitars for a while, so he's not playing the 335, but really, really good. And I saw him on that tour as well, and it was pretty mind blowing. So definitely check that out on Solid Ground. Really, really good album.
Eric, what's your one?
I'm going with Steve Kahn, the Blue Man. Um, I just thought this one had the most fire throughout, maybe consistently. Some downtime. Kahn rips on that one. I like the horns, how they're utilized throughout. I think the little ones. Um, and I think that Daily Valley, I hear vibes or something in there too, kind of going along with the acoustic guitar line. And I like the combo when you're using lead guitar and you've got some acoustic in the background. Um, the opener's terrific. That one almost right, good percussion, I think, on that one, maybe and a little Latin flavor on the opening. Um, I don't know. I just thought Khan had more of an edge maybe than the other three in terms of the playing and the compositions. But I guess as we talked about in the beginning of the episode, I was just like a little disappointed. I hadn't even heard of him before. So I went back and did some reading and, obviously he kind of fits the resume of these other guys with all the different artists he's played with and has quite an extensive solo catalog as well. So, but I just thought his guitar had some really nice bite that maybe was missing from the other ones a little bit between the compositions and the actual lead work. So I really like this one. So I'm going with The Blue Man by Steve Kahn at number 1.
Chris?
Steve Kong, Blue Man. I think for me, musically, out of the four, this for me was probably the best. No vocals, which is always a good sign. And
You're singing my tune, Chris.
the guitar playing, excellent. Steve Cohen really burns it up from start to finish. Good cast of musicians: Bob James, the Brecker brothers, David Sanborn, Will Lee, the legendary Steve Gadd, Don Grolnick. You can't go wrong with those guys. And, I hadn't listened to this album in years. So I went back to listen to this again and I thought, wow, this actually sounds a lot better than I remembered, because I'm more familiar with Khan's later stuff that he put out in the 90s and the late 80s. But this was really good. And, Daily Blues is a great opener. The title track is excellent. Some Downtime. Yeah, it was maybe the weakest of the six, but still enjoyable. The Little Ones was good, and Daily Valley was great, and An Eye Over Autumn was a really good track as well. But this is just a top shelf album from start to finish, and I really enjoyed this one a lot. So that's my number 1, Steve Kahn, The Blue Man. Brilliant album.
So I just realized that there is a CD collection of Steve Kahn's that I have that I haven't listened to in a million years, but I do have it. It's this one right here. I don't know how well you guys can see that. It's called The Collection. It's on Columbia Legacy. So this
Oh yeah,
actually contains 3 or 4 tracks each from his Tightrope, The Blue Man, and the Arrows album. So,
yeah.
and those are all hard to get. So if you can still, I mean, I bought this probably in the early 90s. So if you can track this down, that'll probably
A
give
lot
you
of
a nice sampling from those couple albums.
a lot of the albums on that
Um,
print are out of print.
Oh, from this series? Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I don't know about you, George. I got a ton of these Columbia Legacy remasters from the early 90s, late 80s,
I
early.
have quite a few, yeah.
Yeah. That's I've
yeah,
got the Romantic Warrior and like a whole bunch of other ones from this series. I mean, those were great sounding CDs back in the day. It's like I don't know how well they compare today, but they're nice, really nice packaging and everything.
One that was on there that I could never find because it was out of print was David Sanchez debut.
Yeah.
That was one that was out, it went out of print, and then it just you couldn't find it. Yeah, I'm in with the crowd. My number 1 is Steve Kahn, the Blue Man. This is a revelation to me. I never heard of this album. Uh, the opener, Daily Bulls, this smokes. I get a little D Miola vibes on this between Gad and the percussion, um, just the rhythm section work in general. Will Lee and Steve Gadd. I got a little D Miola vibe on it. Title track's a so-so ballad. Some downtime, like Pete said, Brecker Brothers and Sanborn, just giving you that horn vibe of the Brecker Brothers. They're back on the Little Ones too, same lineup. So, and that's a solid track also. Daily Valley is a mid-tempo piece. Con playing acoustic. It's pretty good. Bit of a grower, I think. The closer, Eye Over Autumn, that's got Con trading fours with Michael Brecker. No offense to Steve, but he kind of gets his ass whipped a little bit. I mean, Brecker's bringing out the nuclear chops on that one.
Monster, man. Yeah.
Yeah,
oh yeah.
almost like taking it too far. Like, Khan's kind of giving him halfway, and then Brecker's just like, "Duh, duh, duh, duh." I was like, wow, slow down, dude. But it's a good tune. Uh, this was the easy one for me. You got no vocals, you got no total snoozers. Just the general vibe, like Eric said, it's got a little more bite to it. Uh, Kudos to Pete for bringing this one to my attention because, yeah, I need this in my collection. So, yeah, that's my number one.
All right, I'm getting the George's pick ready for you.
Yeah. So, uh, when Pete brought this topic to me, this is not my strong suit. I don't have a lot of stuff like this. So I'm thinking about my collection. I'm like, what the hell do I have that kind of fits this? And I realized maybe 6 months ago when we did Japan Part Two, one of our viewers, Calco Dude, suggested on that in the comments of the Japan this Kazumi Watanabe album, Mermaid Boulevard. So I grabbed it at that point and I dug it. But it is in this vein. Lee Ritenour is even on it.
Yep.
He's got guesting on some of it. And it's in the same time frame. So what'd you think, Pete? Is it in the vein or what?
Yeah, it most certainly is in the vein. I really enjoyed this a lot. And again, it's got, just a lot of the same people like Ernie Watts, Lee Ritenour, Patrice Rushen's on here, Harvey Mason, Anthony Jackson, Steve Foreman. I mean, it's all the same people. And it just sounds like a 70s LA fusion album with Kazumi on it. And it's just so cool hearing Kazumi and Ritenour kind of feeding off of each other. It just really works. Neptune, it's got some blazing leads from both of them. Title track, great sax, great guitar solos. You got this kind of acoustic piece, so as a Waltz for Sweet, which is really good. Q, it's nice and funky. Sugarloaf Express is really, really memorable. Love the sax on there. Poppy's Walk, it's really good. You got Gentle Afternoon, which is kind of a mellow one that kind of closes, but I think it's got amazing electric piano on that. And then Kazumi just kind of drops in these really cool, like liquidy guitar solos, just really nice. I had never heard this before. I mean, I've got a ton of. He's one of those guys. Kazumi's like, you think you have a lot of Kazumi Watanabe albums, and then like all of a sudden you discover there's like another 25 you haven't heard yet. So this is one of them. It seems like every other day I'm getting more and hearing about more because albums that he plays on. Ken does to me all the time. He's like, oh, did you ever hear these Japanese albums from blah 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 blah? They all have Kazumi on them. I'm like, geez, of course they do, right? So yeah, I mean, this is really good, and another one I would love to get a copy of because I think this is really, and it fits right in. Where this would sit if we made it a 5 square. I don't know, it would rank pretty high, I think. It's really good. It's all 5 of these albums that we talk about today. If you like this style of fusion, these are all no-brainers to pick up.
What did you think of it, Eric?
Try and find that one.
I kind of run right with Pete. I mean, I really liked the clean tone. The playing is really just nice. I mean, the title track, I love the interplay. I thought it got really funky with the sax section. The band's cooking on that title track. So great opener. Neptune, same thing. Great clean runs. I like the way the piano runs, kind of counter the guitar. I thought that was really good. Waltz for Sweet. I dig the acoustic stuff. That one works for me. Q is another one that has a funky feel, but there's that Watanabe has these little intricacies that go on that I really like his writing or whoever. I don't know if he did a lot of the writing on this. I think because I was talking about before the episode, I couldn't find this one, so I was watching it on YouTube. Listening to it through YouTube. So, Sugarloaf Express, I think, is another one that I just thought it was really intricate, some good playing. It can kind of sound smooth, but when you listen to what they're doing, it kind of levels things out. It's just really good stuff. Probably the only thing I wasn't Poppy's Walk was that one was kind of but I don't know. I love his playing. The clean stuff, a lot of the stuff I listen to is heavier and grittier, but I thought, and I get the way Pete ended his discussion on this. This would have been a tough one to throw. I don't know where this would have been if we were picking 5. This probably would have been up 2, maybe. I really liked this one. So good pick. And like you said, George, I think it slotted in nicely with the vibe of the other 4. I mean, I really felt that it was, of that style for the most part.
You think it fits, Chris? You hear it?
I'm familiar with Kazumi Watanabe. I don't think I've heard that one, but I'm definitely going to check that one out for sure. I mean, I've got a couple of his albums. I've got two that he did with Jeff Berlin and Bill Bruford. There was some really good stuff there. So yeah, I'm definitely going to check that one out. Sounds really good. I don't think I've heard that one yet. It's not an easy one to find though. Been trying to look for that one for years.
Yeah, I got around, I want to say probably like 30 Kazumi albums, but I had never heard this one until Cowco Dude brought it to my attention. Like you guys said, the title track's really cool. Nice sax solo from Ernie Watts, who's a guy that blazes, but he just doesn't seem like he's on a ton of records that come across my windshield. But yeah, he's really good. And then Neptune, that's my favorite tune. Up tempo romp with a blazing lead from Kazumi on the clean tone. I mean, he's just smoking on that. And Patrice Rushen playing some nice Latin flavored piano on that one. Q is a track that definitely evokes this whole ethos to me, the whole theme. And like as soon as I heard that tune, I was just like, oh man, this really fits. Um, Sugarloaf Express is a Ritenour tune. That's one tune I know that Kazumi didn't write. The man himself plays on that one. That's a good tune. I agree with Eric. Poppy's Walk is too chill. It just kind of lays there. The Gentle Afternoon's a solid melodic closer with a rare bass solo from Anthony Jackson down the stretch of it. He didn't really solo that much, but he solos on this. So yeah, I think it's a good album. Um, you know, Kazumi has done so many different styles within fusion that doesn't surprise me at all that he did an album like this. I mean, I'm sure he was probably trying to crack the market and friends with Ritenour or whatever. Maybe it's a straight hiring. It worked out for him because it's a good record.
Yeah.
Also hard to get. So yeah.
I haven't even looked yet. I kind of assumed so, as most of
Yeah.
this is. Yeah.
Actually easy to get if you want to open your wallet. Or
A lot
probably
of stuff you have no choice, right? If you want it, you got to open the wallet. So
Gotta
yeah.
pay.
Yeah,
yeah,
true.
open it wide when it's Jap stuff, but
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
that ain't gonna get it.
It's not George, you want to give everybody a little hint of what's to come next month?
Yeah. I kind of got these last three, or not the last three, but three of these last ones lined up for each one of us having a show that we kind of came up with. So you came up with this one. And next month is the Eric one, which is a violin albums square.
Ooh, okay.
Three violinist solo albums and one album that strongly features a violinist in the group. And we will have the great Len Davis back for that one.
Cool.
So
Sounds good.
Eric will be happy.
Yeah, there you go. Violin.
That should be interesting.
Very cool. Very cool. So for everybody watching, you've got your 4 albums. Listen to them. Rank them as you like them down in the comments below. And also look for George's post with the 2 releases we talked about earlier. So you can go check that new music out. Mike Stern and what was the other one again?
Don Beasley.
That's right. Yes. So yeah, the Return to Forever reworking stuff. So yeah. So don't miss those and visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube all together.
All the damn time.
All the damn time.
Please subscribe if you haven't already and click on that notification bell so you get alert of all of our content as a post. And please do hit the like button before you leave. We'll see you next month here on 4Fusion Friday for our special guest, Chris, for Eric, and for George. I am Pete. Thanks for watching us here, as always, on 4Fusion Friday. Hope you enjoyed the episode and the music, and we'll see you next time. Have a good weekend, everybody. Take care.